we're just not even considering asking people consciously what they think about our ads. I haven't found a structured way of applying behavioral science into business that is repeatable and actually proves to drive results. For data scientists, that was a fantastic moment because all of a sudden data was available. You were actually trying to find the silver lining in those numbers. That's what we are all trying to find. The idea is fantastic and the communication is not ideal.
Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Sam Knowles. Joining us today is Sorin Patilinet, Senior Director for Global Marketing Effectiveness at Mars, the world's largest manufacturer of chocolate, chewing gum and mints, as well as boasting a market-leading pet food division. Brands range from Snickers to M&M's, Wrigley's to Orbit, and Pedigree to Whiskas. With a total marketing budget of an estimated $1 billion, the ability to spot efficiencies and effectiveness and then roll these across the company's brands is critical. Sorin brands himself as the marketing engineer, and we'll come back to that, and he has a loyal following on LinkedIn for his engineering marketing blog. Leading the Mars Marketing Communications Lab from Brussels, Belgium, where he lives with his family, Sorin says that he loves emotional advertising, chocolate brands, indie rock music, Stoic values, miniature trains, and real aeroplanes. Sorin, welcome to Data Malarkey.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to talk to you again.
Very good indeed. Of course, we met originally a few months ago, care of ICOM, the Global Data Marketing Association. Had a fireside chat there. More of an early morning, less of a fireside chat that we have today.
Yeah, we missed the fire. I mean, we missed the fire online. So
we'll get maybe my producer might, my podcast producer might add some flames for effect. It's great to have you with us. I trust that was a decent summary of who you are and what you do. Is there anything that you'd like to add? Anything that I've got wrong?
Nothing to add. I think you did an amazing job at explaining what Mars is, explaining a little bit about me, and I would love to unpack some of those topics today with you.
Without doubt, we will. Now, before we get down and dirty with data, this is, after all, the Data Malarkey podcast, I want to start with a question that's designed to get to the heart of what makes you, you. And it doesn't necessarily ask you to tell us about your work. So can you tell me, Sorin, how do you spend your time?
How do I spend my time? Well, assuming that that time does not, as you say, include work, I could say that I spend most of my time with my kids and my family. I mean, I love watching them grow up. My son Sebastian is 8, my daughter Emma is 4, and it's just amazing to be next to them. I spend my time cheering for my favorite football teams, Liverpool Football Club and Anderlecht, Sporting Anderlecht, who are both top of their leagues as we speak today. I mean, I don't know what would happen when this would be aired out, but I hope they're going to stay number one and win the championships this year. And the third thing that I think is closely related to what I do, because I don't really believe in work-life balance. I think work is part of your life and life is part of your work, and they intermingle much more than you could think. The third point that I'm spending a lot of my time on is writing a book. I'm writing a book about marketing from a practitioner point of view. I see that in today's bookstores, you can find a lot of marketing books or marketing effectiveness books written by academics, written by agencies, but there's not a lot from the practitioner point of view, from the man in the arena, from those that are actually spending the budgets to build those brands. And I have some things to say, and hopefully those things will be out later this year.
Very good. Congratulations. It's a great journey to be on. I had no idea that you were certainly not an Anderlecht fan, but a Liverpool fan. I live with my wife and my son, who's in his second year university, are both enormous Liverpool fans. So although I call myself a Fulham fan, I am a Fulham fan. We get to watch much more. We will be, on the day of recording, we'll be watching top of the table Liverpool taking on bottom of the table Sheffield United. What could possibly go wrong? But I'm really interested to hear about the book. Maybe we'll touch on that a bit more. But I'm wondering, I mentioned in the introduction that you describe or rather brand yourself as the marketing engineer. Is that title going to be, that name going to be appearing in the title of the book, or is that still up for discussion?
I don't know exactly what the title will be like, but I think the main story is about the fact that we need more engineering in marketing. So I'm confident of that. I'm not starting. I mean, I've started writing it a couple of months ago, so I'm already probably midway there. So yeah, let's see. And I think the idea of the marketing engineer starts from my background, which is an engineering background. I don't think you mentioned in the introduction, but I was born in Romania, in Bucharest, and that's where I spent the first part of my life. I've studied engineering at Polytechnica University of Bucharest, and I've studied actually telecommunication networks, which is, I think, the science of building antennas for mobile phones, which was what that time was 3G. It was the new innovation, and what I learned during those 5 years of studying engineering was a structured way of thinking, systems thinking. Anything around the robustness and the quality of data that is so much required in engineering. But I didn't really see myself as a guy who builds or projects antennas for the rest of his life. At the same time, during my university years, I was exposed to something amazing, which is a concept of event called the Night of Ad Eaters. It's a French company that does it, and it's basically at 7 p.m. you go into your local cinema, you sit there, and you start watching ads until the morning. In today's world, it might be a little bit weird, but I can tell you it's definitely not, because those ads are handpicked. They're from all over the world. They're an amazing way of seeing the world through a very creative endeavor. And that's what I think. That's what got me into marketing. That's what got me into advertising. And it happened at the same time as I was studying. And I said to myself, okay, if I go into business or marketing now, I can always come back to engineering. If I stay in engineering, I will never have a chance to work in marketing. So I took my first job with British American Tobacco back in Romania, and after 20 years, I'm still in marketing, and I haven't looked back. I haven't worked a day in my life as an engineer, but maybe that time will come. So that's where I think the concept of engineering and the concept of marketing is brought together inside me, but also is what I strongly believe in. I strongly believe that marketeers are too often pictured as loud extroverts on stages, yelling and colorful and so on, while in fact, the real successful marketeers that I've seen or I've met in my life are the ones that are very structured, that are engineering actually the consumer, the human insight, and yeah, that's the kind of message that I want to project with my book and with everything I do on the blog and on LinkedIn.
I'm completely with you. I mean, I spent a dozen years working after first graduating in communication agencies, and I got very frustrated with the lack of rigor and the lack of data-driven rigor that I saw all around me. And I went back to school and studied for a master's and a doctorate in psychology, experimental psychology. And whilst I was very much into story and creating story and storytelling and story structure from original training in the classics, we'll come back to that when we talk about Stoicism, perhaps a bit later. I found this new language and this new way of seeking out evidence through statistics that I was then very keen to apply. So we have very different backgrounds, very different paths, but that desire to bring rigour to what a previous guest on this podcast, Mark Evans, who was the Chief Marketing Officer of Direct Line Group, the insurance company in the UK for 10 years, he sometimes characterises the marketing department as the colouring in department. Those that don't have quite so much rigour. I think it's less true, less fair than it was maybe when he started out. But I'm really, really interested to hear about that. About that we need more engineering in marketing. Can't wait for the book. Now you've been at Mars for approaching 13 years now. How's your role changed and morphed over that time?
Almost 13 years. So Mars was a fantastic ride for me. If I look back at how even the company, I'm not just the role, but how the company changed during those 12 years is fantastic. I think it used to be a candy and pet food company. It is now a complete nutrition and pet care company. I think it doubled in size. We have more veterinary doctors on our payroll than any other company in the world, because one of our divisions is one of the largest veterinary practices, organized veterinary practices in the world. It's growing amazingly well as a company. So, and this has offered a lot of opportunities. I was very lucky to join Mars at a time where I could build my experience in media and advertising research. It was a little bit easier, I would say, back 12 years ago to understand what did the campaign bring to your sales or to the behavior of your consumers, because 80% of the dollars you would have spent on a campaign was on your TV ad. So it was the regression was a bit easier to understand. Today, when you have 27 creative executions on 35 different platforms, where you don't control frequency and where reach is a little bit difficult to measure, it's a little bit more complicated. But I think the rigor that we brought into Mars through the evidence-based marketing that we championed is helping us now making the right decisions in today's multi-fragmented media world. So a lot of change, but it's normal. I mean, and I'm sure it will change as much in the next 5 to 10 years.
And can you tell us about the way that you and your teams make smart and smarter use of data to try and understand the impact of this $1 billion media and marketing spend?
Certainly. I mean, I could start on very different avenues, I would say, but I'll pick one. From day one in Mars, I observed a positive obsession, I would say, with measurement. We are very conscious of the investments that we make. We're very conscious in how we spend our advertising dollars, and we don't want to waste anything. So we make every decision based on data. We don't trust our guts as probably you would you would put some value to the experience. We don't trust our opinions. We just trust what consumers do, not what consumers say. So behavioral based research was very, very high on the agenda for Mars, and it is still. And that has guided our various practices. And I'll name one, which is our advertising testing solution. In some instances called pre-testing. We know very well what's available out there from a ad testing solution, and most of the solutions are declarative survey based, and we discarded those immediately. And because we did not find something that would answer our high standards, we've built our own ad testing solution. The solution is called ACE, Agile Creative Expertise. It's purely behavioral. It measures real consumers, real attention, emotions, time in view, and it's linked to sales, because we, by employing neurosciences applied to marketing, we found the relationship between attention and emotions and sales, and that's been a journey for the last 4 years now. Actually, I think one of my favorite moments with ACE was the prize we won at ICOM 2 years ago for best use of data. I'm still very, very proud of that. I mean, it's somewhere up there on my library. But yeah, I think that's one example of how believing in behavioral data, we build something that's unique to the industry, and we're using that at a large scale.
Now, some of our listeners to Data Malarkey work very directly in your area. Some of them don't, but some work very directly in the area of marketing effectiveness, and they'll be familiar with the work and the frequent public spats there are between the Australian, well, I suppose they're both Australian, marketing professors Byron Sharp and Mark Ritson. I know you've worked directly with Byron Sharp, and I remember you saying when we spoke at ICOM that you kind of spent years and years trying to prove him wrong and haven't quite managed to do that yet. Tell us what it's been like and what the benefits that you've had from that partnership, both in terms of thinking, but also in terms of practical understanding of marketing effectiveness.
So I first met Byron and the team at Ehrenberg Bass when I joined Mars. It was right after he wrote How Brands Grow, and Mars was one of the first companies that was exposed to that thinking and embedded that thinking into the system. And I think that Mars is where it is today in terms of marketing communications, also because of the early adoption of his thinking, of the evidence-based marketing thinking. Based on that work, we built our own what we call growth philosophy, and still use that in every single decision-making meeting. I mean, it's a set of measures that are closely linked to how brands grow. And anytime we talk about brand performance, we only talk about those KPIs. That makes us very sharp, very focused, and no pun intended here with the sharpness. But we also have access to a lot of data, maybe much more data than Ehrenberg Bass probably has access inside our verticals. And the best way we enable the embedment of that philosophy into the organization was to use our data and to prove those rules, or those laws, I would say, of marketing using Mars data. And they sort of work. It's sort of true, and it's been with us for that amount of time. We've recently done a big revision of how brands grow in today's world, because we thought that the environment has changed so much. There are so many new opportunities for brands to penetrate the market. If you are in grocery, in predominantly in a retail environment, if you're a large brand with an established model, those principles are still true. So whatever happens with subscription, with e-commerce, with the rise of social commerce and everything else, that could be applicable for some categories, but for, I don't know, detergents or candy or any kind of impulse category, surprisingly, those rules are still true. And yeah, that's my experience with the work from Ehrenberg Bass, and I'm a fan, I have to say.
And do you have a soft spot for Mark Ritson as well?
I think very highly of Mark. I mean, Mark actually was my first ever marketing professor because I've never studied marketing. I've only done engineering, as I said, and just before COVID, I decided to join the mini MBA in marketing, the program that he's running. And it's a fantastic program. I highly recommend it. And that's what I say, that he was my only marketing professor. But yeah, I enjoy listening to him. I enjoy engaging with him as much.
Now, I call myself a data storyteller. This is a slightly strange route that I took to this, both academically and practically, through the classics and through psychology. What do you believe is the best way to combine narrative and numbers, stories and statistics? Are there any simple hacks you believe that can enable us to become more impactful data storytellers, both inside and outside our organizations?
Wow, data storytelling is I think it's a very important topic nowadays. So important that I received yesterday an email from our Mars University, which is our internal training, let's say, department, that I was mandatory enrolled in a training called data storytelling. So basically, everyone in the Mars Global Services Organization at Mars is mandated to pass this kind of data storytelling training. So you're definitely into something very big here with data storytelling. I don't know. I mean, you should answer this, Sam. I mean, you're the expert. I'm nowhere near your level of expertise when it comes to storytelling. What would you say are the three most important things?
Well, that's a good question. I like it when my guests turn inquisitor. I think the fundamental skill in good data storytelling is humanity and empathy, and that might not feel like an obvious answer. It might be mastery of tools and techniques of statistics. But I think that if you don't have a good appreciation of the data tolerance of the audience that you're looking to move to action, be they a board or a marketing community or brand managers or media or whoever it might be, if you don't know what their data tolerance is, if you're unable to know your audience and put yourself into their mind, the mindset, their shoes, and appreciate what the story that you're about to tell, how that's going to come across, then you are bound to fail. Second, I would say, connected to that is the curse of knowledge. Curse of knowledge that a former guest on this podcast, Steve Pinker, the Harvard psychologist, defined in an excellent book called The Sense of Style, The Thinking Person's Guide to Writing in the 21st Century. The curse of knowledge, the inability to understand what it's like not to know something that you know. Again, that's a bit of an empathy fail. But those that work with data, those that work with numbers, particularly in the scientific and academic community, but also in businesses too, find it very hard to unknow what they already know, and they assume that other people know that. So I think a failure of empathy, suffering from the curse of knowledge. Those are, I guess, those are two negatives. On the positive front, I would say not showing all your workings out, or rather resisting the temptation, teasing your audience by saying, we've done this piece of research. I'll give you an example. Google have this rule. If you're doing a piece of primary market research or social media listening or something for Google, you're allowed to feed back with 3 slides. And those 3 slides ideally will have no words on them at all. Ideally, there'll be 3 pictures. But if you're going to use words, the font can't be less than 30 points. You can only have 3 lines of text on those slides and only 1 data point. You can have an appendix that has infinity slides, but what they want to know is kind of, so what do the data mean now, what should we do as a result? And I think that kind of rule, that kind of discipline, because what you don't want to do is to say, we've done this and this and this, and we ran this cross tabulation, and we did this ABC test, and down, and none of them showed anything. Your audience is going to go to sleep. But if you say, this is what we looked at, this is what we found, this is what we suggest you do, that's going to get a response. Now, hang on, we've never done that in this category at all. What are you talking about? So I think empathy is the fundamental skill, avoiding the curse of knowledge and being judicious in choosing what statisticians might call the killer statistics, or the most important pieces of data that we should really pay attention to. I don't think, candidly, that either those with data science skills or the data science community have learned that yet. So hopefully there'll be a long and prosperous interaction between me and many global corporates that we work with and my company. But thank you for the question. It kind of
very good answer, and I think the last one resonates very, very highly with me, and I would have answered probably in a similar way. I would have probably focused only on the last one because I don't have that much experience as you have. But and I'll tell you a story here. I mean, my first role in Mars was to measure TV effectiveness, as I mentioned, and the effectiveness of TV is measured by sales uplift. And we used to give marketing the percentage of sales uplift that that campaign generated, which was, I don't know, 7%, 9%, 12%, 20%. And they had some sort of benchmark, what was good, what was not good. But we immediately realized that we were giving away too much data. And the conversation was focused way too much on the numbers and not on the decision that's needed from them. So we decided to stop sharing sales lift numbers, and we bucketed those sales lift numbers in quartiles, and we gave 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 stars. And we told them very clearly that if you get an ad that has 3 or 4 star, keep going. If you get a 2 star, you better be ready to change it. And if you get a 1 star, remove it immediately, replace it with something older. And out of the entire investment in data to measure campaign effectiveness, the poor marketing employee, the only thing that we're seeing was 1, 2, 3, and 4. That was everything. There was nothing else. But this worked to create a language in the organization. This enabled conversations across markets, across divisions, simple conversations. And it drove the right behaviors, because at the end of the day, what you want with market research is to drive the right behaviors in the organization, and not necessarily just to explain what's happening with a lot of words in the market. So I think we kept the ambiguity of the data, because the data was noisy, and the difference between 7% and 8%, sometimes it was statistically significant, sometimes it was not. And sometimes you should look at that small difference, sometimes you should not. But it's better to keep that ambiguity with the experts, with the marketing research department, and leave marketeers, like the marketing department, to do what they're good at, which is, I don't know, create ads, build amazing products, and use all the knowledge that we can provide to them. So that's an example of simplifying the message, removing the ambiguity, and I would say also removing some emotions, because a lot of conversations were getting very emotional, which were like, oh, 8 is better than 7. Oh, you don't like my ad, that's why you don't want me to succeed, and so on. And the moment when you add a layer of I don't know, simplification, it removes also those emotions. So those are good. That's a good answer, I would say, Sam. If I had to rate you on the three things, and I'm shocked to know what kind of guest I'm following in their footsteps. I mean, I adore Steven Pinker. So.
Cool. Well, there's it's a growing archive. I've a couple of episodes before yours drops, and this name may not be so familiar, but my two kind of heroes in this area. There's he's recently retired, but a kind of Mr. Statistics in the UK for the previous kind of 40 years. A guy called Professor David Spiegelhalter from Cambridge University, who looks at modifying risk. If anybody can have been said to have had a good pandemic, it was David, because he kind of put the UK government's shoddy figures into regular perspective. But we're a very broad church now. I think that you've answered this, certainly the first part of this already, but I want to ask you this question. I'm doing increasing amounts of work with all sorts of organizations about it's not a two-step dance, but the move from data to insight, how good companies are at moving from data to insight and getting to genuine insight, and then the move from, once you have that insight, moving from insight to action. How would you characterize how Mars is in both of those domains, data to insight, insight to action?
I'm trying to not be too positive here, but I think it's easier to get from data to insight than it is from getting to insight to action. We did an amazing job at Mars to do everything at scale. Every kind of, even the ad testing solution that we launched 3 years ago, we're testing 800 ads every year with using the same method. So by generating a lot of scale, you can run meta learnings and you can find the insights that tell you what's important in a 5-6 second ad, how should emotion be tackled, what about negative, what about positive, when do you need to grab attention, what are methods to grab attention. So all those insights, we have them. So I would say check on data to insights. Insights to execution or behavior. I don't know exactly what you were exactly the word you use, but
Action.
that's a little bit more action. Yeah, that's a little bit more complicated because then you stop playing only with data, but you play with people's feelings and with with a with what they are their core belief, and sometimes you need to change those core beliefs, and you can easily create a PowerPoint with amazing insights and send it to your creative agency, but you need to do a lot of work to basically transform those into action. So we're still on that path. I mean, our agency partners are always very, very close to what we're doing and very, very engaged. But also with the level of challenge that is healthy, I would say. So we haven't cracked that. I think we're seeing improvement in the quality of our advertising. It's not always 100% great, and that's what makes me still engaged in this place. So yeah, but I think it's much more complicated. So if you find any guest that has the magic formula, I'll be happy to talk to them.
Very good. I will let you know. I want to change gear a little bit and talk a little bit about AI. And about kind of how you feel about the sudden, in the last kind of 16, 17 months, kind of mass availability of AI tools, what they and the things that they can do with data and statistics and coding. Does it make you feel optimistic or pessimistic, excited, terrified, some combination of those?
All of them at the same time. I'm still not clear what we will do in 10 years from now. I would be very, very curious to find out what the marketeer will do in 10 years from now. AI is not new. When I talk about AI, I talk about an iceberg, and the small part that's visible was exposed to all of us when large language models were coming to our phones and our browsers with ChatGPT and Gemini. But underneath the waterline, in that iceberg, there are all the machine learning model, the neural processing models, and all the advanced analytics that underpin those large language models. And those are not new. I mean, we've been using various AI methods in our research solutions for years now, not just since ChatGPT came into place. Some examples there are we, from our partners, realized we use their AI to codify emotions based on facial expressions, based on eyes on the screen. We look at eye tracking or attention, and that's an AI. From our partners from CreativeX, their AI model is measuring the presence of our brands, the presence of our consumers' faces, for example, and the prevalence of those in our advertising. So there's a lot of AI. There's a lot of models that are extremely useful for the marketeer today, without even going into LLM. Now, if you go into large language models, I've seen a lot of examples of support when writing briefs to our agencies, but also on the agency side, I've seen great examples of how today you used to receive from your agency an animatic or a script on how your campaign would look like. Today you're receiving a video, and it's not the final product, but it's very close to the final product, and it allows faster changes, faster customization. It allows really the creative idea to come to life much clearer for the client. So I mean, I adore this space, but I'm also a little bit worried that there's so much noise around that that prevents us from what's important. So what's important for now is machine learning and less so LLMs. But I could be wrong. I don't know. Probably there's a chat GPT there that will check this podcast and will get what I'm wrong. So.
Now, shortly before we recorded this, in the week or so before we recorded this, the sad but I guess inevitable news came through that Daniel Kahneman, the great Princeton psychologist, had died. And I'm, as I say, I had a time back at school about 20 years ago. To cut my psychological chops. And I'm always interested to see when those principles jump from the lab into the commercial world. And I've been particularly interested to see the rise of behavioural science and behavioural economics, kind of championed and pioneered and developed in large part by Kahneman and Tversky and many others, Richard Thaler and others. Is that something that is behavioural economics, principles of behavioural economics, something that you have applied, you do routinely apply in your work at Mars?
Not as much as I would have loved to. I'm a fan of behavioral science, but I've always struggled with the application. To be fair, I think I believe in it. It got me a job at Mars, I think, because I was asked, what's the book I'm reading? And during the interview, I said it's Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. And it was a fantastic choice because the recruiting line manager was a huge fan of that book. And immediately I was like, wow, that's my favorite book. So we established a rapport very quickly. But I was actually reading Predictably Irrational at that time. So irrespective of what you hear in the news nowadays, because I don't know if you follow the latest on behavioral science, there are accusations against some of those scientists that the data was a little bit cherry-picked and sometimes even fake. There's even a New Yorker article that appeared last year. So it's a little bit murky, but there's definitely something. I mean, what Kahneman did was some fundamental thinking that we applied in business today. I mean, we're only about system one. We're just not even considering asking people consciously what they think about our ads. So in that sense, the big thinking is embedded into the Mars research philosophy. Now, in day-to-day applications, it's not that. I mean, all those, I don't know, decoy effects, and maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But I haven't found a structured way of applying behavioral science into business that is repeatable and actually proves to drive results. And Richard Shotton, a good friend, we've worked with him to try to embed some thinking. We've done some internal trainings inside Mars. I think everything is great. I struggle with the repeatability of that.
Got you. No, got you. Very good. No, I'm not surprised to hear you say it's all about system one. Those who believe that kind of everybody is Homo economicus and is making rational decisions have been asleep for the past 40 years, given what we know about decision making, and given also what we know, I think, about the way when you're talking a lot about when you're talking about attention, when you're talking about eye tracking, and so on. We make our decisions emotionally and we justify them rationally, and there are those telltale signs and ticks. So that's very encouraging to hear. Now, I mentioned I was a classicist originally, and I'm a big fan of the Stoic tradition from Marcus Aurelius and Seneca onwards. But I particularly like the way, and I don't know whether you'll agree with this or not, because we've not talked about this before, but I particularly like the way that it's been brought to life for the modern world by Ryan Holiday and his everyday Stoic approach. We can't control events. We can only control our reactions to them. I think I was drawn back to Stoicism and Stoic principles in the pandemic. Just as an aside, I got addicted. In the UK, there were 5 o'clock every day press conferences about how many deaths and infections, the rest of it. I kind of got addicted to that, and I found myself after about a month almost having magical realism type thinking that if we could control the numbers, things. And I just kind of thought, hang on.
I was there. I was there as well.
And so I just chanced across a translation of Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, and just kind of sat and read it for a night, and it made me go back to that. Tell me about more about your love of Stoic values that you have in your bio.
So I'm just looking at on my desk. I have, and honestly, this was not a setup, but I have these
Very
3 books,
good.
which I pick them up from time to time. I can never read them from start to end, but there's always something interesting in them, and I have them on my desk because of Ryan Holiday. He does a fantastic job to make this thinking, which is a little bit abstract, very valid for today's world. And a couple of examples. So at the beginning of this year, I did his New Year, New You challenge, which is a 21-day challenge based on Stoicism, in which he challenges you to do something every day for 21 days, from taking a cold shower early in the morning to, I don't know, reading something from Marcus Aurelius, from writing your rules for the year, Stoic rules from the year, and so on. So I highly recommend that. It's really a great introduction to Stoicism. The other thing that I religiously read is his newsletter called Daily Dad, which comes every lunchtime, I would say, for me in Europe. That's, I think, by far the best parenting education I ever received. I mean, it's probably the only newsletter that I read on a daily basis. I subscribe to a lot, but I don't read religiously anything else than the Daily Dad from Ryan Holiday. And I don't know. I mean, it just, in this crazy world, it just feels that those Stoic values, they just feel right. I mean, I struggle to understand. I mean, I struggle to find the flows in them. It is something that helps me make better decisions at work, at home, and it's been really a fantastic discovery, which is quite recent. I think I discovered the entire topic probably through Tim Ferriss, more than Ryan Holiday, but it was also probably in the year of the pandemic, while I was counting the cases and the deaths and trying to find patterns in that data. I think, honestly, for data scientists, that was a fantastic moment, because all of a sudden data was available. It was updated daily. And you were actually trying to find the silver lining in those numbers. That's what we were all trying to find. And how it ended, we probably didn't. We were not able to explain how it actually ended. So, but I still have my bookmark with those COVID cases by country, and so.
Very good, very good. Now, listen. Of course, we've got to have what I'm calling a Columbo question. Just one more thing. Is there anything about the way that you, in your life, in your job, work with data that I haven't asked you that you think I should have done?
So, what's a Columbo question?
Oh, sorry. It's a terrible cultural reference. In the 1970s, Peter Falk, a kind of ham Hollywood actor, played a detective called Columbo, and Columbo, he bumbled his way through and it was, the way that it was dramatized was that the audience had kind of the view of God, and you could see, he was missing clue after clue after clue after clue, and every single time you thought, how can this man not see that this is happening? And then he would ask just one more thing. When you were seen out with, and he would ask the killer question that brought all of the data together. So the Columbo question is often used by doctors, GPs. If you go to a GP surgery, they'll say, "Oh, doctor, I've got an ingrowing toenail," and then they'll, we'll have some cream, and then they'll be putting on their coat. Anything else that you'd like to ask? Me? Oh yes, I'm coughing up blood, and suddenly you kind of get to the truth. So not as dramatic as that, but is there anything about the way that you work with data that I haven't asked you that you think I should have done?
I think I mean, of course, there are a lot of elements that we could still unpack. I think we talked a lot about the past. We didn't talk a lot about the future. I would have expected a question around the what's the plan? What's the bigger plan? What do I want to do where will I be in 10 years? Knowing what I know and
answer your own question then. Sorry,
I will answer it. So I think, I mean, every day I'm super surprised about the level of knowledge that a large company like Mars, but this is not just Mars, every other large advertisers in the world have dedicated millions of dollars to understand how communication works, how persuasion works, and how brands are built. And the level of scrutiny that we have for our communication messages is unbelievable. The level of small details that we change is unbelievable, and there's a lot of expertise that's being built in this industry. And when I will finish my marketing career in 10 years from now, I would want to use that experience for the greater good. So I don't think I mentioned, but I'm based in Brussels, in Belgium. Belgium is the capital of the European Union, and I sense this nagging feeling that the way the European Union project is communicated to its citizens is not ideal, and the European Union could use more expertise from CPG or from the advertising space to craft those messages, to land those messages better with its citizens, because the idea is fantastic and the communication is not ideal. But in the same way, I think the United Nations or other NGOs could benefit from the great insights that we have on how to win consumers' minds or people's minds. And that's where I would love to dedicate the second half of my career. But that's for let's say in 10 years from now.
Very good indeed. Well, listen, I'm speaking to you from the south of England, and we're painfully well aware that some messages from the EU didn't quite land for all variety of different reasons 8 years ago, and suffering every day. A very good friend of mine was going on holiday to Italy this Easter, but his passport ran out 10 years ago, his passport was issued more than 10 years ago, and that meant that his wife had a nice week's holiday by herself because of the unintended consequences. So yes, all strength to you in communicating that, and maybe in 10 years' time, there may be this little island coming back, cap in hand, saying please. And I do hope that the EU punishes the UK for having been so foolish. Now, tell us, Sorin, where can our listeners, our viewers, find out about what you're up to online in social media? What's the best place to find the engineering marketing community that you're building?
There are two places. One is LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I share a lot of insights about marketing. I share the books I read, and I keep myself engaged because I believe in this power of social, like I would say, business social media to get to raise the level of the sea. There are amazing debates, there are amazing conversations happening, and I've met amazing people on LinkedIn. So I will be a huge fan of this platform. And for those that prefer my blog, I'm always I can be found at sorinp.com, which is the address of my blog, and soon probably in your bookstore with my book that will hopefully arrive quite soon this year. I'm using this, I'm prompting this book idea because the more I put it out there, the more there is a pressure on me to finalizing it and actually stay true to the promise.
Very good. I'm very well aware of that. Making the social commitment. A book is coming soon, and the pressure that can build with that. Thank you so much for your time, Sorin. I think if only there were more people with your approach to using data smarter, there'd be rather less malarkey in the world of marketing effectiveness, and rather more data-driven common sense. Sorin Patilinet, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to Data Malarkey. To find out what kind of data storyteller you are, why not take our data storytelling scorecard? It takes just 2 minutes to complete and will give you a personalized report right away. Visit data-storytelling.scoreapp.com or follow the link in the show notes.